The grand chamber of the Galactic Council was the most beautiful room in the known universe. Giant crystal pillars rose from the floor like frozen waterfalls. Light from 3 distant suns poured through windows made of pure diamond. 12 species had built this place together, and for 800 years, it had been the heart of galactic civilization. Kong Tae-woo stood at the center of this magnificent room and felt like an insect. The human ambassador was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had served Earth for 30 years. He had smiled through 1,000 insults. He had bowed when he wanted to shout. He had stayed quiet when every part of him wanted to scream. Today, he hoped things would be different. Above him, the 12 founding species sat on their crystal thrones. The Velans were the oldest all beings, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. They believed themselves the wisest creatures in existence. Their high speaker, Auric, looked down at Tae-woo with the expression of a man watching a dog try to read. "You may speak," Auric said. His voice echoed through the chamber like wind through an empty cave. Tae-woo cleared his throat. "Honored members of the Council, humanity comes before you today with a simple request. The Kepler Belt contains 47 planets. All of them are empty. No species has claimed them. No life exists there. We ask permission to establish colonies in this region." He paused, looking up at the faces above him. The Taurith delegates whispered to each other. The Bizarre ambassador was cleaning her claws, not even pretending to listen. "Humanity has been a member of this council for 300 years, Tae-woo continued. "In that time we have given much. Our doctors cured the Velan plague that killed billions. Our engineers built the hypergates that connect your worlds. Our soldiers helped end the Taurith Civil War. We ask only for the chance to grow, as any species should." The chamber was silent. Tae-woo felt hope rise in his chest. Perhaps this time they would listen. Perhaps 3 centuries of service had finally earned humanity a place at the table. "Hi." Speaker Auric raised one of his 4 hands. "The Council has already discussed this matter," he said. "Your request is denied." The words hit Tae-woo like a physical blow. "May I ask why?" "You may not." Behind Tae-woo, the human delegation shifted uncomfortably. Admiral Yoon-hana sat in the observer gallery, her hands gripping the arms of her chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. She was the commander of Earth's entire defense fleet, a woman who had faced death 100 times without flinching. But watching her people be treated like this made her sick. "Hi, Speaker," Tae-woo said carefully. "Galactic law requires that all decisions be explained to affected parties. I respectfully ask for the reasoning behind this denial." Auric's eyes narrowed. The other Velan delegates exchanged glances that might have been amusement. "Very well," Auric said. "The Council has determined that humans are too aggressive for independent expansion. Your species is emotionally unstable. You are prone to violence. Giving you 47 new worlds would be like giving weapons to children." Someone in the Taurith section laughed. It was a high, clicking sound that echoed through the chamber. Tae-woo felt his face grow hot. "We have never started a war with any Council species. We have only fought in defense of others, which proves our point," Auric replied. "You are always fighting. It is in your nature. The Council believes it is best for humanity to remain under proper supervision. Perhaps in another century, when you have matured, we will reconsider." Another century. Tae-woo had heard those words before. His father had heard them. His grandfather had heard them. Humanity had been hearing them for 300 years. "Hi, Speaker. I must formally protest this decision." "The evidence does not support the matter is closed," Auric interrupted. He waved one hand dismissively. "You may leave." The insult was enormous. In Galactic Protocol, dismissing a speaker mid-sentence was one of the worst things you could do. It meant you considered them beneath notice. It meant their words had no value. It meant they were not worth the air they breathed. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the Taurith stopped laughing. Everyone understood what had just happened. Tae-woo stood very still. His heart was pounding. His hands were shaking. 30 years of service. 30 years of swallowing his pride. 30 years of believing that if humanity just worked hard enough, they would finally be accepted. And this was the result. He looked up at High Speaker Auric. The Velen was already turning to speak with another delegate. As if Teiwu had already disappeared, something broke inside the human ambassador. Not his spirit, something else. Something that had been holding him back for his entire career. A chain made of hope and patience and faith that the system would eventually be fair. No, Teiwu said. The word was quiet, but it stopped everything. Auric turned back, surprise on his blue face. What did you say? I said no. Teiwu's voice was steady now, calm. We came here as partners. You have treated us as pets. We came offering friendship. You have given us contempt. We came seeking equality. You have shown us that you will never see us as equals. He reached up and removed his translation device, the small machine that allowed species to understand each other. He held it in his hand for a moment, looking at it. Then he let it fall to the floor. The crash echoed through the silent chamber. Humanity withdraws from these proceedings, Teiwu said. We will not beg for scraps from those who see us as less than nothing. He turned and walked toward the great doors at the end of the chamber. His footsteps were the only sound in the room. In the observer gallery, Admiral Yoon Hannah rose to her feet. She looked at Teiwu, and then at the council above. For one moment, she met High Speaker Auric's eyes. She saw the confusion there, the disbelief, the first tiny seed of fear. Good, she thought. You should be afraid. She followed her ambassador toward the door, one by one. Every human in the chamber stood. Up. Scientists, diplomats, military officers, engineers. They removed their translation devices and dropped them where they stood. The small machines clattered against the crystal floor like falling rain, Dr. Park Sora. Humanity's chief science liaison, had spent 20 years developing medical treatments for alien diseases. She had saved millions of Velen lives. As she walked past the Velen section, she did not look at them. They were no longer worth looking at. General Baek Jin-ho was the last to leave. He was an old soldier with scars on his face and steel in his spine. At the door, he paused. He did not turn around. Every treaty humanity ever signed with this council ends at midnight tonight, he said. Every single one. You wanted us gone. Now we are gone. The doors closed behind him with a sound like thunder. In the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, no one moved. No one spoke. For the first time in 800 years, 12 founding species had no idea what to do. High Speaker Auric finally broke the silence. They will return, he said. They need us. But his voice shook when he said it, and deep down he knew he was wrong. The news spread faster than light itself. Within 1 hour, every major world in the galaxy knew what had happened. Humans had walked out of the Galactic Council. They had ended every treaty. They had dropped their translation devices on the floor and left without looking back. At first, most species laughed. On the Velen homeworld, news programs made jokes about human arrogance. Let them go, one famous broadcaster said. They will come crawling back within a month. Humans cannot survive without us. The Torith military commanders dismissed the walkout as theater. It is a negotiation tactic, General Voss said to his staff. They want better terms. We will wait, and they will return, with their heads down. Even some humans thought their leaders had made a terrible mistake. On Earth, protesters gathered outside government buildings. We need the council, they shouted. This will destroy us. But Ambassador Kang Tae-woo was calm. He stood in his office on the diplomatic station, looking out at the stars. Admiral Yoon Hannah stood beside him, her arms crossed over her chest. They think we are bluffing, Hannah said. I know. What happens when they realize we are not? Tae-woo turned to look at her. There was something in his eyes she had never seen before. Not anger. Not fear. Something harder. Something that had been buried deep inside him for 30 years and was finally free. Then they will learn, he said. What happens when you push humans too far? The first sign came 3 days later. The hypergates were the greatest achievement of galactic civilization. These massive structures allowed ships to travel between star systems in minutes instead of years. They connected 10,000 worlds. They made trade possible. They made the council possible, and humans had built most of them. On the third day after the walkout, Every human engineer working on hypergate maintenance received the same message from Earth. Come home, they obeyed. Within a week, 17 hypergates began to fail. Without human engineers to repair them, small problems became big problems. Big problems became disasters. The gate connecting the Velen homeworld to their largest colony shut down completely. 300 cargo ships were stranded. Food supplies began to run low. Medicine could not be delivered. High Speaker Auric demanded that humans return to their posts. The message he received in response was 4 words long: "We do not serve you." The second sign came 2 weeks later. The Velen plague had killed 2 billion people before human doctors found a cure. That cure required constant production in specialized facilities. Humans had built those facilities. Humans had trained the workers. Humans had supplied the key ingredients. All of that stopped. Ingredients come from Earth, Dr. Park Sora explained to a reporter. She was back on her homeworld now, working in a human hospital. "We offered to share the formula with the Council years ago. They refused. They said they did not want to depend on human science." She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Now they can see what independence feels like. Homeworld. Hospitals began to ration the cure. Doctors had to choose who would live and who would die. The people demanded answers. High Speaker Auric had none to give. The third sign came 1 month later, the Torith. Empire had nearly destroyed itself in a civil war 50 years ago. Human diplomats had negotiated the peace. Human soldiers had kept that peace. Human advisors had rebuilt the Torith economy. When those humans left, old wounds reopened. 2 Torith factions began fighting again. Not a full war, not yet, but the violence was growing. The faction leaders who had once sat together now refused to speak. The peace that humans had built was crumbling. General Baek Jin-ho watched the reports from his office on Earth. His aide, a young officer named No Sung-min, stood beside him. "Should we do something?" Sung-min asked. "Millions of Torith could die if this becomes another civil war." Jin-ho shook his head slowly. "We spent 50 years helping them. We lost good soldiers keeping their peace. And how did they repay us? They laughed when the Council called us animals." He turned off the screen. "Let them solve their own problems." Back on the Council station, panic was setting in. High Speaker Auric called emergency meeting after emergency meeting. He demanded solutions. He demanded plans. He received nothing but frightened faces and empty words. "We must force them to return," one delegate suggested. "Send a fleet to Earth. Make them understand." The Torith military commander shook his head. "You have not studied human history. Every time someone has tried to force humans to do something, it has ended badly. For the ones doing the forcing, then what do you suggest?" The commander was quiet for a long moment. "I suggest we apologize." Auric's face twisted with disgust. Apologize? To them? They are the ones who walked out. They are the ones destroying the galaxy with their selfishness. They are the ones who kept this galaxy running, the commander replied. "We just never wanted to admit it." While the Council argued, 3 species made a different choice. The Torith ambassador, a wise old creature named Melik, had always respected humans. He had studied their history. He had learned their languages. He understood them better than any other alien in the galaxy. Melik sent a secret message to Earth. "The Council is broken," he wrote. "But not all of us are blind. The Torith people wish to negotiate a separate treaty with humanity. We offer full recognition as equals. We offer partnership, not supervision. We offer respect." To other species, the Bizarri and the Kalensin, similar messages. They had seen what was happening. They understood that the old way was dying. They wanted to be on the right side of what came next. President Cho Mina read these messages in her office in Seoul. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a mind like a computer. She had been elected on a promise to restore human dignity. Now she had a chance to keep that promise. "Bring me Ambassador Melik," she said to her staff, "and prepare a conference room. We have new friends to welcome." When the news broke that 3 council species had made independent treaties with Earth, the galaxy changed forever. Other species began to question the council. If the Torith could deal with humans directly, why couldn't they? If the Basari could recognize human equality, why couldn't everyone? High Speaker Auric watched his power crumble. He sent one final message to Earth, demanding that humanity return to the Council and honor their obligations. President Chomina's response was broadcast to every world in the galaxy. Humanity has no obligations. To those who treated us as less than equals, she said, we will not return to the Council. We will never return, but we will build something new, something better. A galaxy where every species has dignity. Every species has rights. Every species has a voice. She paused, looking directly into the camera. The old order is finished. Those who wish to be part of the new order know where to find us. In his chamber on the council station, High Speaker Auric turned off the broadcast. His hands were shaking. His hearts were pounding. For the first time in his long life, he understood what fear felt like. And somewhere in the darkness of space, something ancient and terrible was watching. The Drath hegemony had waited centuries for the council to weaken. Their time had finally come. 6 months had passed since the walkout, and the galaxy was a different place. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was a shadow of what it had been. 3 of its 12 species had left to join humanity's new alliance. 4 more were secretly negotiating with Earth. The remaining 5 spent their days arguing about who was to blame for the disaster. High Speaker Auric had aged 20 years in 6 months. His blue skin had turned pale gray. His 4 hands trembled when he spoke. The other Velen leaders whispered that he should step down, but he refused. Admitting defeat would be worse than death. On Earth, everything was different. President Chomina stood before the United Terran government in the Great Hall of the Global Assembly. Behind her, flags from every human nation hung side by side, a reminder that humanity had once been divided too. Today I announce the human sovereignty doctrine, she said. Her voice was calm, but carried to every corner of the massive room. From this day forward, Earth will deal with other species as individuals, never through the Council. We will make treaties with those who respect us. We will trade with those who treat us fairly. We will defend those who stand beside us. She paused, looking at the thousands of faces watching her. And we will never again bow to those who see us as less than equal. The hall erupted in applause. Some people were crying. After 300 years of humiliation, humanity finally had its pride back. But not everyone was celebrating. Admiral Onhana sat in her office on the orbital defense station, reading intelligence reports. Her face was grim. While politicians made speeches and citizens waved flags, she was watching something that worried her deeply. The Drath hegemony. The Drath were not part of the Council. They lived in the outer rim of the galaxy, far from the civilized worlds. For centuries, they had been expanding slowly, conquering smaller species, building their military strength. The Council had always kept them in check, not through war, but through the threat of war. A united galaxy was too strong for the Drath to attack. But the galaxy was no longer united. Hannah called General Beek Jin-ho to her office. The old soldier arrived within the hour, his face as hard as stone. You have seen the reports, Hannah said. It was not a question. The Drath are moving ships to their border with Velen space. More ships than they have ever gathered before. They smell blood. Ginho nodded slowly. The Council is weak. The Velens have lost half their trade routes. Their economy is collapsing. Their military has not fought a real war in 200 years. And we trained their soldiers, Hannah added. We built their weapons. We designed their defense systems, all of which they have not maintained since we left. Hannah leaned back in her chair. If the Drath attack, the Velens will fall. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. And once the Velens fall, the Drath will keep going. They will not stop until they control the entire galaxy, including Earth. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside the window, Earth turned slowly a blue and green jewel hanging in the darkness of space. Everything humanity had built, everything they had achieved, all of it could be destroyed if the Drath won. What do you recommend? Ginho asked. Hannah thought carefully before answering. We prepare. We build more ships. We train more soldiers. And we wait. Wait for what? For the Council to understand what they have lost? Far from Earth. Ambassador Kong Tae-woo was having dinner with Melik, the Torith ambassador who had first reached out to humanity. They sat in a small restaurant on a neutral space station. The food was strange Torith, cuisine mixed with human, but both had learned to appreciate each other's tastes. Your people are angry, Melik said. His translator turned the clicking Torith language into smooth human words. Tae-woo shrugged. My people have a right to be angry. We gave everything to the Council. We received nothing in return. I understand. But anger can be dangerous. Melik leaned forward, his large eyes reflecting the dim light. I have studied your history, Tae-woo. I know what humans can do when they are angry. I have seen the records of your world wars. Your atomic weapons? Your capacity for destruction. Are you afraid of us? Melik was quiet for a moment. I am afraid of what will happen if humanity lets anger guide its decisions. You have every right to watch the Council burn. But if you do, the Drath will burn everything else, including Earth. Tae-woo set down his eating utensil. You think we should help them? After everything they did to us? I think you should help yourselves. The Drath are coming. Everyone can see it. If humanity stands aside while the Council falls, you will face the Drath alone eventually. But if you help the Council survive, you will have allies when that day comes. Allies who called us animals. Allies who laughed at us. Allies who have learned a hard lesson. Melik reached across the table and touched Teo's hand, a gesture of deep respect in Torith culture. The Council was wrong about humans. I always knew it. Now they are beginning to understand. Give them a chance to make things right. Tae-woo looked at his old friend for a long time. I will bring your words to my president. I cannot promise anything more. That is all I ask. 3 weeks later, the Drath attacked. It happened faster than anyone expected. One moment the border was quiet. The next, 300 Drath warships poured into Velen, spaced like a flood of death. The Velen defense fleet was caught completely off guard. Their commanders had grown soft and slow. Their ships were poorly maintained. Their soldiers had forgotten how to fight. In the first battle, the Velens lost 40 ships. The Drath lost to High Speaker Auric received the news in his chambers. His aide said he did not speak for an hour. He simply sat there, staring at the wall, as reports of disaster poured in. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Send a message to Earth. His chief aide stepped forward. What should I say? Auric closed his eyes. The words tasted like poison in his mouth, but he spoke them anyway.
Please.
We were wrong. Help us. On Earth, Admiral Yoon Hannah read the message aloud to her command staff. The room was silent when she finished. Commander No Sung-min was the first to speak. Do we let them burn? Hannah looked at the tactical display on the wall. It showed Velen's space, the advancing Drath fleet, the burning remains of Velen warships, and behind the battle lines, millions of Velen civilians who had nothing to do with the Council's arrogance. Mothers and fathers, children and grandparents, ordinary people who had never insulted humanity, who had never laughed at human ambassadors, who were simply trying to live their lives. Now they were going to die. Hannah thought about everything the Council had done, the insults, the dismissals, the 300 years of treating humanity like lesser beings. She thought about what Melik had said, about anger, about what humans could do when they let anger guide them. And then she thought about what kind of species humanity wanted to be. Prepare the fleet, she said quietly. Sung-min looked surprised. Admiral? Hannah turned to face her officers. Her eyes were hard, but her voice was steady. We are not them, she said. We do not let innocent people die because their leaders were fools. We do not watch children burn because their politicians insulted us. She walked to the display and touched it, bringing up the image of Earth. This is who we are. This is what makes us human. We help those who need help heaven when they do not deserve it. The Terran Armada moves in 6 hours. Tell the Drath that humanity is coming. In the darkness of space, the greatest human fleet ever assembled began to wake, and the galaxy held its breath. The Drath's Supreme Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Velen Prime burn. His name was Krath, and he had waited his entire life for this moment. His father had dreamed of conquering the galaxy. His grandfather had dreamed of it too. For 3 generations, the Drath had been planning, building, waiting for the right time to strike. That time had finally come. "Report," Krath said. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "The Velen fleet is destroyed," his lieutenant replied. "Their orbital defenses are failing. Ground forces are ready to land. The planet will fall within 2 days." Krath allowed himself a small smile. The Velens had always looked down on his people. They had called the Drath barbarians, savages, animals. Soon they would call the Dreth masters. "What of the human fleet?" Krath asked. He had heard rumors that Earth might intervene, but he did not believe them. Humans had been humiliated by the Council. Why would they help their former oppressors? "No sign of them, Supreme Commander. It appears the humans have chosen to stay out of this conflict." Of course they have. Humans are emotional creatures. They let their feelings control them. Right now, they are too busy celebrating their revenge to think about strategy. Krath turned back to the view screen. Below him, cities were burning. Millions of Valons were running, screaming, dying. It was beautiful. Begin the landing. "I want boots on the ground by Supreme Commander." Another officer's voice cut through the bridge, sharp with sudden fear. "Long-range sensors are detecting a massive energy signature. Something is coming through the hypergate." Krath frowned. "The Velen reinforcements? I thought we destroyed their reserve fleet." "It is not Velen, Supreme Commander." The officer's hands were shaking as he read the data. "The energy signature does not match any Council species." "Then what is it?" The officer looked up and Krath saw something in his eyes that he had never seen in a Drath warrior before. Terror. "Is human." The Terran Armada emerged from the hypergate like a storm. Breaking through clouds, there were 500 ships. Not the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled, but the most advanced. Each vessel was a masterpiece of engineering, fast, powerful, and deadly. They had been designed not for show, but for war. At the head of the fleet was the TES Indomitable, Admiral Yunhana's flagship. The ship was massive, 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons, covered in armor that could stop almost anything. Hannah stood on her bridge, watching the tactical display. She could see the Drath fleet ahead, spread out around Velen Prime. She could see the burning cities below. She could see the Velen survivors huddled in underground shelters, waiting to die. "All ships report status," she said. One by one, her captains checked in. "All systems operational. All weapons ready. All crews prepared." Commander No Sung Min stood beside her. "The Drath outnumber us 2-1, he said quietly. 600 ships against our 500. Anna nodded. "I know. Some of our people might not come home."
"I know that too."
Hannah turned to look at her young officer. "Do you believe we are doing the right thing?" Songmin thought for a moment. 6 months ago, I wanted to watch the Council burn. I was angry. We all were. He paused. "But my grandmother used to say that the measure of a person is not how they treat friends. It is how they treat enemies." He met Hannah's eyes. "We are doing the right thing, Admiral." Hannah smiled a small, sad smile. Then she turned back to the display. "Open a channel to the Drath flagship." The face of Supreme Commander Krath appeared on the screen. He looked annoyed, not afraid. "That would change." "Humans," Krath said. "You are far from home. This conflict does not concern you. I am Admiral Yunhana of the Terran Armada. You will withdraw from Velen space immediately. This is your only warning." Krath laughed. It was an ugly sound. "You have 500 ships. I have 600. Do the mathematics, human. You cannot win." Mathematics is not everything, Hannah replied. You are looking at our ships and counting numbers. You should be looking at our history and counting graves. The laughter died in Krath's throat. Humans do not lose wars, Supreme Commander. We have fought each other for 10,000 years. We have learned lessons that your people cannot imagine. Every weapon on these ships was designed by creatures who grew up killing each other. Hannah leaned forward. You have 60 seconds to order a retreat. After that, I will show you what humans do to those who threaten innocent lives. Krath's face twisted with rage. You dare threaten the Drathagemini? I will destroy your fleet and then burn your pathetic planet to ash. Your species will be nothing but a memory. Hannah's expression did not change. 60 seconds, Supreme Commander. I suggest you use them wisely. The connection ended. Sung Min looked at the timer. He is not going to retreat. No, Hannah agreed. He is not. The 60 seconds passed. The Drath fleet did not move. Hannah took a deep breath. All ships, attack formation. Target their command vessels first. Show them what we are made of. The Terran Armada surged forward. What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries. The Drath had numbers. They had size. They had experience conquering weaker species, but they had never fought humans. Human ships were faster, more maneuverable. While Drath vessels moved like mountains, Terran ships danced like flames. They slipped through enemy formations, striking weak points. Disappearing before the Drath could respond, human weapons were more advanced. The Council had always dismissed human technology as primitive. They had been wrong. Terran plasma cannons cut through Drath armor like hot knives through butter. Terran missiles found their targets with perfect accuracy, and human crews were better trained. Every officer on every ship had studied tactics that the Drath had never imagined. They communicated perfectly, coordinating attacks with split-second timing. They adapted to changing situations instantly. In the first hour, the Terran Armada destroyed 100 Drath ships. They lost 12. Supreme Commander Krath watched in disbelief as his fleet crumbled. This was impossible. The Drath were the greatest warriors in the galaxy. They had conquered dozens of species. They could not be losing to humans, emotional, unstable, primitive humans. But concentrate fire on their flagship. He screamed. Destroy their admiral. 50 Drath ships turned toward the Indomitable. Pouring fire at the massive vessel, Hannah watched the incoming attacks calmly. All batteries returned fire. Helm. Evasive pattern Delta. The Indomitable twisted through space with impossible grace. Enemy fire that should have destroyed it hit empty void instead, and its weapons answered with devastating accuracy. One by one, the attacking Drath ships exploded. The battle lasted 12 hours. When it was over, the Drath fleet was broken. 300 of their ships were destroyed. 200 more were crippled and drifting. The survivors were fleeing toward the Hypergate, running for their lives. Supreme Commander Krath's flagship was among the dead. He had refused to retreat, refused to surrender, refused to believe that humans could defeat him. He had been wrong. On the surface of Velen Prime, millions of survivors emerged from their shelters. They looked up at the sky and saw human ships standing guard. They saw the burning wreckage of the Drath fleet, falling through the atmosphere like shooting stars. They saw their salvation in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. High Speaker Auric watched the reports come in. His aides stood around him in stunned silence. The humans had won. Not just one dominated. They had faced a larger enemy fleet and destroyed it completely. They had lost only 50 ships while annihilating 600, and they had done it to save the people who had humiliated them. Why? Auric whispered. Why would they help us? After everything we did, no one had an answer. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Yoon Hannah sat in her command chair. Her body was exhausted, but her mind was clear. Commander Sung Min approached with a report. The Drath are retreating to their home space. Intelligence suggests they will not attack again for at least a decade. Maybe longer. Good. Admiral, You should know the Velans are sending messages. Millions of messages. They are thanking us. Hannah nodded slowly. We did not do this for thanks. But they are grateful anyway. Suman hesitated. The council is asking to speak with you. They want to discuss peace. Hannah looked out the view screen at Velen Prime. The fires were dying down. Emergency ships were landing. Doctors and supplies were being distributed. Life was returning. Tell them I will speak with them tomorrow, she said. Today, we help the survivors. She stood up and walked toward the door. And Sungmin, make sure our soldiers know what they accomplished today. They did not just win a battle. They showed the galaxy who humanity really is. She paused at the doorway. That is worth more than any victory. 2 years had passed since the Battle of Velen Prime, and the galaxy was being reborn. The old Galactic Council was gone. Its crystal chamber stood empty now, a monument to arrogance and failure. The species that had once ruled the galaxy, from those towering seats, had learned a painful lesson about the true meaning of power. In its place stood something new. The Interstellar Assembly met for the first time on a space station orbiting Earth. The location had been chosen carefully, a symbol that humanity was no longer begging for scraps at someone else's table. Now, the table was theirs. Ambassador Kong Tae-woo walked through the corridors of the station, his footsteps echoing on the polished floor. He was older now, his hair completely white, but his eyes were brighter than they had been in decades. The weight that had pressed on his shoulders for 30 years was finally gone. Dr. Park Sora walked beside him, carrying a document that had taken her 6 months to write. The Terran Charter of Rights, a new foundation for galactic civilization. Every species equal, every voice heard, every being treated with dignity. Are you nervous? Sora asked. Tae-woo smiled. I spent 300 years watching humanity be treated like dirt. Today, we help build something better. How could I be nervous? This is the happiest day of my life. They entered the main chamber together. The room was different from the old council hall. Instead of towering seats that placed some species above others, everyone sat at the same level, around a massive circular table. No one looked down on anyone else. 20 species were present, the 12 founding members of the old council, plus 8 new civilizations that had asked to join the assembly. They filled the chamber with colors and shapes that the old council had never seen. The galaxy was finally being represented properly. At the center of the table sat President Chomina. She had aged gracefully in the past 2 years. Her hair touched with silver, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. Beside her sat Admiral Yoon Hannah, still in her military uniform, and General Baek Jin-ho. Thought. His old face carved with pride, the Velen delegation sat on the opposite side of the chamber. High Speaker Auric was not among them. His own people had removed him from power after the Drath attack. His replacement was a younger Velen named Tavin Sumwon, who had grown up watching human ships save her world. When everyone was seated, President Cho Mina stood. 2 years ago, humanity walked out of the Galactic Council, she said. Her voice was calm, steady. We did not do it lightly. We did not do it for revenge. We did it because we believed that a galaxy built on inequality could not survive. She paused, looking around the chamber. We were right. The old order crumbled within months. When the Drath attacked, the council could not defend itself. 300 years of arrogance had made it weak. The Velen delegates shifted uncomfortably. The memory of their defeat still burned. But today is not about the past, Mina continued. Today is about the future. We are here to build something new in assembly, where every species has equal standing, where no one is dismissed because of how they look or where they come from, where dignity is not earned through centuries of servitude, but given freely to all. She gestured to Dr. Park Sora. Dr. Park has prepared a document that will serve as the foundation of our new order. I invite Representative Taven to read the first article. Taven rose slowly. She was young for a Velen barely 200 years old, but she carried herself with quiet dignity. Her 4 hands trembled slightly as she took the document. Article 1, she read. Her voice was clear, though emotion made it waver. All species are created equal. No civilization shall be treated as lesser than another. No being shall be denied rights based on their world of origin. She looked up from the document. Before I read further, I must speak. The chamber fell silent. On behalf of the Velen people, I offer a formal apology to humanity. Her voice cracked, but she continued. For 300 years, we treated you as inferior. We laughed at your diplomats. We denied your requests. We called you animals. Tears were forming in her large eyes. And when our world was burning, when our children were dying, you came to save us. Not for reward, not for power, simply because it was the right thing to do. She bowed her head, a gesture of deep respect in Velen culture. We were wrong about you. We were wrong about everything. I am sorry. The chamber was absolutely silent. Ambassador Tewu rose from his seat. He walked slowly around the great table until he stood before Taven. For a long moment, they looked at each other, human and Velen, former enemies, now something new. We forgive you, Tewu said quietly, but we do not forget, and we will never again allow our dignity to be the price of peace. He extended his hand. Taven looked at it, understanding the human gesture. Slowly, she reached out with one of her 4 hands and clasped his. Around the chamber, delegates from 20 species began to applaud. The remaining articles were read one by one. Each species signed the charter, pressing their symbols into the document that would shape Galactic civilization for generations to come. When the ceremony was complete, Admiral Yun Hana stood with General Beek Jin Ho in the observation gallery. Below them, delegates mingled and talked Velens, speaking with humans. Torith laughing with Basari, former enemies becoming friends. Think they have learned? Ginho asked. Hannah was silent for a moment, watching the scene below. Some have, she said finally. Others will need more time. Change does not happen overnight. And what about the Drath? They are still out there. They are. Hannah turned to look at her old friend. But they are weak now. Their fleet is destroyed. Their pride is broken. It will be decades before they threaten anyone again. And when they do, Hannah smiled a small, hard smile. Then we will remind them why they should not. Below in the chamber, Ambassador Melik approached Ambassador Tewu. The Torith's eyes were bright with emotion. You have done something remarkable today, Melik said. You have built a galaxy that my children can be proud of. Tewu shook his head. We all built it together. Humans cannot save the galaxy alone. We need friends. We need partners. We need beings like you who believed in us when no one else did. What will you do now? You have spent your whole life fighting for human dignity. Now you have one. Tewu looked around the chamber, at the humans and aliens talking together. At the document that would change everything. At the new galaxy being born before his eyes. Now I will rest, he said. My work is done. It is time for younger people to carry the torch. He glanced across the room at Commander No Sungmin, who was deep in conversation with a group of young Velen diplomats. The future belongs to them. All we can do is make sure they have a future worth inheriting. That night, President Chomina gave a speech that was broadcast to every world in the assembly. Today, we created something new, she said. Not perfect. Not complete. But better than what came before. A galaxy where beings are judged by their actions, not their origins. Where power comes with responsibility. Where the strong protect the weak, instead of crushing them. She paused, her eyes reflecting the starlight. Humanity has learned hard lessons over our long history. We have made terrible mistakes. We have caused suffering and death. But we have also learned to be better. We have learned that true strength is not about domination. It is about lifting others up. Her voice grew stronger. To every species watching tonight, I make this promise. Humanity will stand with you. Not above you. Not below you. Beside you. We will face the darkness together. We will build the future together. And we will never ever let anyone tell us that we are less than we are. She lifted her chin. This is who we are. This is what we have always been. And this is who we will remain until the last star burns out. In the observation gallery of the Indomitable, Admiral Yoon Hannah watched the speech alone. Outside the window, Earth turned slowly, its oceans gleaming in the sunlight. General Baek Jin-ho found her there an hour later. "You should be celebrating with the others," he said. Hannah shook her head. "I am not much for celebrations." "Then what are you doing here?" Hannah was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "I am remembering everyone who did not live to see this day. All the humans who served the Council faithfully and died without ever being treated as equals. All the soldiers who gave their lives at Velen Prime." She touched the window gently. "They built this, not us. We just finished what they started." Jin-ho nodded slowly. "They would be proud. I hope so." Hannah turned to face her old friend. "I hope so." Outside the window, a fleet of human ships drifted past, the guardians of a new age. Among them flew ships from a dozen other species, all working together, all equal. The galaxy had changed forever, and it had changed because humanity had refused to accept anything less than their full dignity. They had walked out, had stood up, and they had shown the universe what it meant to be human.